you want me to lower that?
Karen?
No, she looked like it was too high. We're glad you.
No, it's fine. I was
Sure.
actually just seeing how, so it does move relatively easy.
Kind of.
Okay, so for our commission, I want to angle it this way, so when we have a presenter, we show it. Not now. I just want to know how hard.
You just have to be careful about the plug.
Yeah, so we don't have to do it once, just so that
Yeah.
people will be able to see it.
I just come from swimming,
Thank you.
and so I
Let's
was.
put it to a more
It is
normal.
yeah, I know, my normal. For those that are vertically challenged.
I could have, I'm logging in mile and quarter these days.
Just even better. She's still pretty athletic.
Do you swim too? Oh, she's looks
I
like,
should swim like a rock.
that's me. I have to have a lot of buoyancy around me.
Let's get it.
You have 30 seconds.
That's why I have lifeguards. I drive the Sea-Doos. I don't go in the water.
Dude,
Or I'm on a board.
but you do, that's great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
that's fun.
Fun.
Thank you.
Are we on video? Good to go? Excellent. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a rainy spring day here in Encinitas. It's 4 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. And can we go through the roll call?
Chair Morton,
Here.
Vice Chair Dominguez, Commissioner Andrade,
Present.
Commissioner Chesnowskis,
Here.
Commissioner Selden, and Commissioner Vaughn.
Present.
Let the record show all those who said they were present, and with Vice Chair Dominguez absent and Selden.
Sheldon. Excellent. Thank you very much. Commissioner Vaughn, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No, there are not.
Excellent. We have a limited action item today, and we have a quorum of public speakers as well. It's nice to see you. Thank you for coming. Before we jump into it, just remind us to use the microphone before we speak. We do have public comment, and we'll do that after the presentation. Yeah. Thank you very much. And then we're going to use our speaker buttons before we speak for training. Is there any public comment before the presentation?
For 5B, there is.
Okay, so no non-agenda items, public speaking.
Nope.
Excellent. The floor is yours.
All right. Well, good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you for having us. We are going to be providing a presentation on our results from the community survey, workshop, and public comment. And I just want to thank my team, Marie and Melissa and Bryce and Jordan Villa Gomez, and for all their work and effort into getting this survey complete. It was a lot of work to set up the workshop and then also collect all this information. So just big shout out to them. So just to go over the agenda, we're going to go over the assignment overview, kind of what the the council gave as an assignment to the commission. We'll go over the workshop and survey creation and outreach, workshop and survey results, Public Health and Safety Commission and Fire Department next steps, and then some questions afterwards. And so just to give a quick overview of the assignment. The assignment originally brought up as a council-initiated item by Mayor Ehlers was to reach out to the community and find out how we are prepared for a large wildfire event. And he asked to use the Leavenworth Hunt Fire Safe Council, the fire department, and any other appropriate entities that come up with this information. And so I think if you go to the assignment part of this, he had 6 bullet points, and it was to hold public meetings to identify key community concerns, potential major risks. Number 2 is to prioritize risks by severity and likelihood, focusing on those most critical, which we can do later at a meeting in the future. Complete the process promptly to inform the May-June budget cycle. Collaborate with EFD to develop mitigation strategies for high-priority risks to support the fiscal year 25-26 budget. And engage the fire department as well as Leavenworth Hunt Fire Safe Council and their expertise, and then coordinate with the different relevant agencies, including the water agency, which we did reach out to, and they will have information for us on our next meeting when we give you what gaps there are in our response efforts.
Chief, are you open to questions during the presentation? Would you rather us wait to the end?
Be easier if you waited to the end.
Okay.
For us, because we kind of have a flow going, but
Sure.
if that's okay with you, Chair?
Yep.
All right. So I'm going to turn it over to Marie, our emergency manager, to get the next couple slides.
All right. Good afternoon, Commissioners. So I'll provide more detail on the next slide, but I just want to kind of provide an overview on our project history. So on March 17th special meeting, we had public comment from that. We also had our workshop, which was on March 22nd. Our survey was actually released on March 18th and closed last Thursday on the 27th. And then Chief and I are here this evening to go through and talk about the results of that. So Chief, next slide, please. All right, so there was kind of 3 major kind of areas where we worked to gather, in addition to what commissioners' work was done out in the community, that we as a team focused in on. There was 2 public meetings, or Public Health and Safety Commission meetings. So the one was on March 10th. We had 1 speaker that came forward and spoke in regards to the project, provided some feedback, and then we had 2 speakers at the March 22nd meeting. And I'm going to then just kind of the highlights on the workshop, which was held on March 22nd. We had 30 attendees. From that, we had 146 comments. So those of you that were in attendance of commissioners, you'll remember that we had kind of broken it out into 2 different phases. One was allowing our attendees to be able to put some comments, and you can see that displayed here on the screen, some Post-its on, and Chief will talk about those kind of core topic areas in a moment. And then also we had our kind of roundtable discussions, breakout sessions that we had with the attendees. And then the survey, which I mentioned, opened up on March 18th, closed last Thursday. We had 125 responses from that survey. But I want to highlight some of the things that staff did in the promotion of the survey and the workshop. So this really kicked off on March 13th. The workshop was promoted on the city's weekly update. Those of you who subscribe to that, there's about 1,900 people in the community that subscribe to that. And then it was also promoted, the survey and workshop, on the March 20th update. The workshop was promoted on the city and fire department's social media accounts on March 14th. On the 18th, the survey was promoted on the city's main page. So if you've been to the city's main page, up at the top, there's a section called Important Updates. We had a link directly to the survey up at the top of the website. There was also survey flyers. My understanding, I'm looking over at my senior commission member, that those flyers were also provided at the commission meeting as well. Then promotion packets for the with workshop and flyer survey flyers were made for each of the commissioners that were able to be picked up here at City Hall. We also, and you may have seen these, but we had 2-foot by 3-foot signs made for the surveys promoting these. These were put out at all of our city facilities as well as at the fire departments. So people could scan QR code or go to the link to the survey on the city website. We put flyers out for both the workshop and the survey out here at City Hall, so people could, grab a flyer to attend, and also did a lot of promotion at the council meetings. So on March 19th, the workshop flyers were set outside of the chambers here, so people could, again, just really promoting that workshop as well as the survey. And then part of what Mayor Ehlers had asked was that we worked in partnership with the Aleavine Fire Safe Council. So I was in communication with Sarah Lifton, emailed her the workshop and survey flyers, and she sent it out to their 1,300 people that are on their mailing list, as well as promoted it on their social media, as well as provided it to their neighborhood ambassadors, really to get that push out to Aleavine. The workshop was also on the 19th, and again, there was multiple promotions on the social media between the city and the fire department's social media, so multiple times we were pushing that out. One of the things on that second promotion that we did, we also had a version that we had translated into Spanish for the survey, so because the survey in chief will talk about this in a moment, but we also had the survey available in Spanish as well. And then Chief had reached out and done a heavy reach out to our Encinitas School District, and through that partnership with the school district, we were able to have them promoted out through one of their applications that they use to provide updates and information to parents called Peach Jar, so it was pushed out that way. And then also reached out to the chamber and all three of what we like to say the 101s, so Encinitas, Cardiff, and Leucadia. It was also sent out to them to promote it to their members as well as through their different platforms. It was also, flyers were placed over at the Community and Senior Center, and then also the fire department already had a planned mailing to the HOAs, so on defensible space. So we just took that opportunity as a fire department and because of the short time frame, instead of making it part of the hard copy mailing, we were able to email this out to 49 HOAs. So a lot of heavy kind of promotion, as you can tell, on the workshop and on the survey. Chief, I'll turn that back over to you.
Thank you, Marie. As you can see, we did a lot in a couple weeks of promoting this, so it was a heavy lift. So again, thanks to my team. So let's go over the actual results. I know in the report itself, it was an Excel spreadsheet that was super easy to read. A lot of information, even with, it says 131 survey participants happened, but when you look at the 5 times, I think it was that we practiced the survey, it counted that, so it's really 125. All right. So what we're going to do is go through the questions itself first and just get kind of a high view of what the results were. And then I'm going to break it down into those core themes that we had. So first, what community do you live in? I think a lot of us thought that Aleavine would be one of the highest represented in the participants of the survey, and it went as such, right? So Aleavine at 35%, down to Leucadia at 9%. If you look at New Encinitas, Old Encinitas, and Cardiff, it was pretty evenly distributed there. So the household range, if you look at the 65 years and older, that was our majority of the survey participants. Now, the survey participants in there had a household range, and you could click more than one option, right? So there was some 65 plus that had 45 to 54 years and older. So it's not an exact measurement, but it definitely showed how the elderly, I'll say 65 and plus is elderly, even though I'm getting old and I don't think that's old anymore. I think that they were the most concerned about our wildfire safety. If you look at the 18 to 24 years old, they were underrepresented in this, but I think when you look at the results later, they were some that might have feel prepared but don't feel like they have enough information. So while it's only 2%, this really helps us when we take that data and we start putting it into the age categories or the community categories. It lets us know who is most vulnerable to not getting the information or doesn't have the education or feels that we are not prepared, right? So we can tailor how we go and talk to each one of these groups or communities. So how do you currently receive emergency alerts about wildfires or other disasters? Text alerts was by far the most at 37%. And as you look down to the bottom here of other, it was 10%. Some of these comments, if you guys looked at it, were, I didn't know there was any kind of notifications. Some of them didn't have anything to deal with the emergency alerts itself. So those kind of all fell into that other category. But do not currently receive emergency alerts about wildfires or disasters is 5%. To me, that's high. We need to still figure out what to do, because if you're looking at the 125 that took it, and now you get a whole 62,000 people perspective, that number could grow, right? So just some of those food for thought as we look through the data. Aware of any emergency preparedness applications to download? 59% said yes, 40% said no. There were comments in there that said, I didn't even know that the website had information for public safety on it. So again, just data for us to consider as we go forward with community outreach. So if yes to question 4, which application do you use? I'm sure you're going to see Watch Judy, Genesis spelled a million different ways, Pulse Point, a CAL FIRE app, San Diego Alert, or SD Alert. Some people didn't know exactly what they were called, but when you start looking into them, it's pretty much the 3-4 top ones that we use. When you get down to some of the other responses, they didn't necessarily match up to the apps or websites. So we kind of just moved on from those. Have you experienced any challenges with emergency communication systems, delayed alerts, lack of information, or confusing messages? 77% said no, 22% said yes. For those that said yes, that they've had problems or challenges experienced with emergency communication, some of them really talked about the lack of information from the officials or the city officials. We had 12 years ago, an ambulance couldn't get through the community gate. Information does not often pertain to their specific area. They had multiple comments about helicopters and not being able to hear what they're saying. So it was kind of all over the place when they answered yes to that question. And they asked people how to navigate, if they know how to navigate the City of Encinitas website to access emergency preparedness resources. And when you look at the strongly agree as the one bookend, then neither agree or disagree as the middle, and then the disagree or strongly disagree, it's pretty much chopped up in thirds there. So a third of the community really feels that they know what they're doing when it comes to our website. And then there's the middle third that was neither agree or disagree, and then we had some that, obviously a third, that don't know how to use it and strongly disagree that they do know how to use it. So good information for the city as a whole, not just for the fire department. So what improvements, if any, would you suggest enhancing emergency communication and public awareness? There was a lot of information in here. When you try it, you'll see that when we put it into the core themes later on, that's where this really starts to make sense. But I don't know if you've read that easily read Excel sheet, but there's a lot of information, a lot about public outreach and public education, community education, more outreach from the fire department. different texting applications that the city is sponsoring, not just the Watch Duty or Genesis Protect or SD Alert. So there was pretty much answers all over the map. So we took those down, and you'll see how we put those into the core themes later on. I'm confident in my knowledge of local evacuation routes and procedures. If you look at I don't know if you guys can see that. There you go. Strongly agree was 8.4. Agree is 34.4%. Neither agree nor disagree was 16%. They disagree was 27%, and strongly disagree was 13.7%. So you had a pretty even match there as well, with people who agree versus disagree. For those that, different question. Okay. So what barriers or challenges in emergency preparedness have you experienced or anticipate experiencing? So lack of transportation ended up coming below 1%. That's why you see a 0 there, but there was still some mention of that. Mobility issues or congestion. There was a lot of talk about that, and mostly development, and not necessarily the mobility, but the worry of development coming in. Unclear evacuation plans was the big one at 29%. Disabilities were 4%, and then the large or small animal evacuations at 12%. Have not experienced or do not anticipate experiencing barriers or challenges to emergency preparedness was 13, and then other was 12. So there was a good spread of information, obviously, with the unclear evacuation plans leading the pack on that one. And then what suggestions did people have for improving community evacuation preparedness? There was the few I don't really know, don't understand enough to be able to give a suggestion. We talked about Liebenhain and the double L gate, and the different, how big it is for trailers. They want more evacuation information, more pamphlets. So as you go down all of the information, we've been able to put it into core themes again, so that we can give the overarching, what is the problem, what are people saying. A lot of it was widen roads, more development. Some people had some really nice things to say, and some had some interesting things to say. So what steps have you taken to fire harden your home and property? Most people who have done that have done defensible space, tree trimming, vegetation clearing, which goes all the way down to other in here had to do with the answers that they're not sure how to do it, or their neighbor's not doing it. If you look at the Excel spreadsheet, you can see some of the comments there that didn't necessarily answer this question, but did have some kind of merit to defensible space and home hardening. Challenges or barriers that have prevented people from implementing fire-safe measures at the home. I think if you look, the cost and is the biggest one, and then resources and vendors. I think if you collect those together, right? Some people say cost, and some people say I can't find a vendor that is within my budget too. So, as we look at that, we're thinking, what kind of resources can we give the city to understand where or what companies that are can be used to assist them with their defensible space and home hardening and preventing the fire from catching their house on fire. So what support or resources or support would help you and your neighbors improve wildfire preparedness? Community-driven campaigns. The fire department should have staff going out and looking at everybody's home in the community, especially in Liebenhain. That was something that they brought up a lot. Removing trees, more pamphlets, a whole city plan or evacuation plan. So evaluations of the whole city when it comes to defensible space. So there's a lot of, defensible space, but a lot of we need to be more proactive and go out there and look at people's properties and cite them and make sure that they're having their own defensible space. The fire department and law enforcement are effective in responding to wildfires and large emergency incidents. Good thing is that the community feels strongly that we can respond with 20.6%. They agree at 37.4%. neither agree nor disagree at 35%, and then disagree or strongly agree at 6.9% if you add them together. So the community, I think, thinks we're doing a pretty good job. Obviously, we can always look to do better, and that's why we're here, right? Do you feel there are enough firefighter resources or personnel and equipment available in Encinitas? 64% of the respondents said no, and 35% said yes. For those that said no, Alevenheim Fire Station 6 was a big one. Fire Station 1 was a big one. NFPA standard of 4-person staffing on fire engines was mentioned. More fire stations altogether were mentioned. More equipment, more apparatus was mentioned. So some of the same stuff that we've heard in the community before. Do you feel your neighborhood is prepared for wildfire or major emergency? 80% of the respondents said no, and 19% said yes. So if they said no to question 19, it said only one way out neighborhood, and there isn't any accident. If there is an accident on Quail Gardens Drive, close to 2,000 people will be stuck. A lot of it had to do with just the development that's coming in, mobility issues, evacuation routes. They talk about one way in, one way out in Alevenheim, having more proactive community engagement, more preparedness on their end. So there was a lot of information, again, that you had to kind of sift through here. What community-based preparedness programs have you participated in? Most people said they have not participated in, but a lot of people later on mentioned that they would like to see CERT going again, which we do have, again, planned for next year. And then 18% were part of the Fire Safe Council in Alevenheim, and then other, they didn't really have any good answers for other. It was, we need the CERT program. Didn't really answer the question, but we still put it in there as other. What ideas do you have to strengthen community-wide preparedness efforts? Focus groups, more communication, more public outreach, more things about Fire Station 1 and 6, development, again, within the city, more workshops, more community-based education. Some people would put no ideas or X or none. One person put evacuation drill for the city. That would be interesting. I'd like to see that one happen, but I don't know if that's doable. Additional information that people would like to share regarding wildfire and emergency preparedness in Encinitas, communicate, educate, those were the big ones in there. Opening the emergency gates off of Double L during any red flag warning. The homeless population was in there. We talked about, or they talked about encampment fires and worrying about that. Again, a lot of bouncing back and forth to a lot of different ideas. And then what immediate actions would you like to see from the city fire department or law enforcement to enhance preparedness and response? So need a good marketing and social media savvy person to get people interested and then bring to top of mind every 3 to 6 months to, again, opening the emergency gate, full-size fire station in Alevenheim, and they talk about it at Station 1 now. Clear homeless encampments and work with sheriff to keep them off the streets. When you go through here, there's a lot of really good ideas in here that we'll take a look at. But the big ones are evacuation routes, fire stations, development, and homeless were mentioned a few times in this one. All right, go back to the PowerPoint here. So those were the results of, the high-level results of that survey. I know that the Excel spreadsheet breaks it each down for you if you want to go line by line in there. But we broke it down into 8 core themes in the community emergency alerts, evacuation, emergency planning, emergency response and fire service, community neighborhood preparedness, app and website awareness, home and property preparedness, law enforcement and resource concerns, and additional feedback and immediate action. So we'll kind of go through these themes quick, and because this is kind of the 30,000-foot view, if you will. But so in the evacuation and emergency planning, the alerts, the concerns of the community that took these surveys in the workshop as we put them together was alerts are inconsistent and they're uncleared or delayed. They say that many residents can't hear the helicopter announcements or don't receive timely text. That was said multiple times there if you look through the Excel sheet. Confusion during past events. I wish they gave us a little bit more detail there on what events they were talking about, but that's one of the bullet points here. Desire for opt-in systems and citywide alert customization. We kind of talked about that with our own text kind of program or opt-in program. And then seniors and non-tech users feel left out of communication efforts. So there's definitely some conversation in there, or some information leading to some of the 65 and up don't use technology well or don't use it at all. I know some of the 65 and up people I talked to had to have their 18 to 24 family members come and show them how to use the QR code and get to the right spot. App and website awareness, so kind of the same theme, right? Many respondents are unaware of preparedness apps for the website or websites. Those aware mention difficulty navigating the city website, and then some rely solely on TV, word of mouth, or the social media. For community and emergency alerts, there's widespread confusion about evacuation routes, which we have heard before. Everybody wants their own evacuation route. Multiple communities cite lack of signage, drills, or defined plans. Residents feel they're on their own in an emergency, and then the fear of traffic gridlock and bottlenecks, especially in Levenheim, Quill Gardens, and Fox Point Farms. As the theme for home and property preparedness, the overgrown vegetation, lack of defensible space on both private and public lands. Property owners don't know what to do or think it's someone else's responsibility. And then the fear that the neighboring homes could compromise their fire safety. On the emergency response and the fire service side, there's widespread belief that fire resources are insufficient, especially in Levenheim and high-density areas. Frustration over the lack of a local fire station 1 and 6 were mentioned many times. The concern about response times, especially with narrow roads and traffic barriers. Mixed views on effectiveness of current fire response systems. So those are the kind of the 30,000-foot view of trying to theme these all together. One of the things I'll say is the concern about the response times, especially with narrow roads and traffic barriers. The chicanes, the bulb outs, or the bike bollards are one of the things I've brought up a few times as concerns. Law enforcement and resource concerns. So homeless encampments were repeatedly cited as fire hazards. Law enforcement viewed as understaffed or slow to respond. The general sentiment of a lack of visible presence or support during emergencies. And then there's a mixed perception of who is responsible for public safety coordination. And just to go back to the law enforcement and resource concerns, we are collaborating with the sheriffs on this. So they're aware of all of the survey results, and they're also looking at how they can bring back to the commission what they're doing well, what their gaps are, and how they can shore those gaps up later on as well. So community neighborhood preparedness, a lot of the respondents said that many neighborhoods are unorganized and unconnected. Some areas have fire councils, while others have no leadership or awareness. People are willing to help, but need a nudge and a plan. And then the desire to re-engage the community emergency response team. So one of the things that we noticed in this was the third bullet down is people are willing to help but need a nudge and a plan. I think there's a lot of community members out there that want to be part of the solution. They just need a little bit of direction. So that's good information for us moving forward. Additional feedback and immediate action. Build Fire Station 1 now was in there a few times. Multiple calls to break ground immediately. Calls to end lane diets, pop-outs, and chicanes, which block emergency vehicles. Overwhelming frustration with overdevelopment without infrastructure upgrades. Residents plead for direct mailers, simple education, leadership visibility, and then emotional pleas to protect seniors, pets, and vulnerable neighbors. So that kind of concludes that overarching results of the survey. The next steps would be you guys accept this presentation. We have a gap analysis that we will go back and do for our next meeting. We will look at how we can present to you what we're doing well to mitigate some of these concerns, what gaps we have, and what we would need as far as resources or money in the future to be able to close those gaps. And then you guys, as the commissioners, would have the ability to make the recommendations, which we will end up taking to council at a later date. And with that, if you have any questions, we are here to answer them.
That's great. We'll do clarifying questions from the commissioners, then we'll do public comments on that, and then we'll go to deliberation amongst ourselves after that. So, commissioners, before we bring up the public comments, do you have any clarifying questions related to the presentation? We believe in you. We're Commissioner Andrade.
Yeah, just a question regarding the CERT teams. Is there any thought as to use them in a possible, firestorm when we are in resource drawdown for specifically, volunteers and or like we would in any other type of large scale emergency?
Yeah, the CERT, the Community Emergency Response Team, would be part of that that response. We could use them for shelter work, or there's a lot of things we can use them for. So they would be part of that response.
If there's nothing else, I just have the one, I think, clarifying question on the first slide, the direction that we got. I just want to clarify that he was specific about focus on wildfires, right? Or that the focus of what we're talking, we should really, and that's what we should be paying attention to.
Yeah, correct. I think Mayor Ehlers and the council, when they gave the assignment, was about large wildland fires and conflagration events. So.
Yep. Sure about the conflagration events?
Yes, and I will.
Yeah, you're right.
poke him
Because
a
I
little bit
remember
he said it wrong a couple
learning
times,
the
so.
word. Yep, correctly. Yes. Just a chance for me to say the word conflagration incorrectly again. With that, we'll move to public comments. How many do we have?
We have 3 comments for 5A.
Excellent.
First, we have Karen Caden. Then we'll have Molly Hilton. And then we'll have Dennis Caden.
Thank you, Josh. I met you at the Encinitas Academy. Thank you for the fabulous dinner you guys gave us. Hi, I'm Karen Caden. I live in the northeast section of Leucadia, and I have a concern regards to, I'm ECC, Encinitas Community Collective, that brought up an appeal against Piraeus Point, which is Cannon property that's on Piraeus and Plato. And they got a waiver regards to density bonus to not put the utility poles underground. And I know this is a strategic idea from the county, and hopefully the city can push it, and hopefully that we can get rid of those waivers on density bonus saying not to put it underground, put them underground, and only costs around 1 million something, and our builders most likely can afford it, in my opinion. And secondly, I have a concern regards to providing evacuation route for Piraeus Point. You cannot go out, if you travel south on, where Piraeus Point is, if you guys know where it is. I said Piraeus Point, Piraeus Street, that goes south to Leucadia Boulevard. We cannot egress out to Leucadia Boulevard, the southways. So I hope that Josh and his administration will show us how and when, if there is a fire risk, that we can go out that south bend. I remember we spoke about that quite a while ago, but how are we going to get notice? And I know that you had 150 people that wrote 150 information to requesting that, but we don't know how we're going to be notified. Third, there's some private property that we know that there's some dry weeds on. I have called last month, and there's a piece of property on Plato that has dry weeds, and for years, the first owner has plowed them down, and now there's a new owner, and I hope that the fire department will consider contacting them after I contacted the fire protection and have not heard, but we're all about safety. We always watch out for our neighbors, and I want to thank you guys for being here. Thank you.
If you could provide a little bit better address to the chief, maybe, for the place where there's dry brush,
Yes,
that would be great.
I will, thank you.
Perfect.
Good afternoon, Molly Henley in District 2. So I thought the outreach was really a great start. I suggest further communication on the key learnings. And a little sidebar, I thought the stats were pretty interesting. I thought the median age for homeowners in Encinitas started at about 45, so I'm not surprised that the bulk of respondents were 65 plus. I'd like to also, of the survey participants, I don't know if the city was able to capture, or for the next time you do a survey, to have them opt in for future surveys. I know surveys can get tiring, and some people do them because they're bored. Some people do them because they are helpful. I think there was a lot of great information that Josh just categorized. I would like to ask that to continue this work focus into the work plan. So I think you have your roadmap, which is fabulous. And I think there's lots of opportunity for further communication that Marie highlighted, that, you know, using the website, social media, and flyers to the apartment complexes. I think as we get more new developments, we're going to have a lot more new citizens here, and they're not going to know this information. So that was really helpful. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Dennis Caden. First, with the expansion of the high fire hazard zones from the California, from the state, I'm wondering if the city can revise the mandate to underground utilities where the developer were exempt from doing that, and I'm thinking primarily Piraeus Point. The other thing is school evacuation, unless I did show up late, I apologize. If that was not covered, is that a separate issue? Because you got moms and dads coming in while everybody's trying to get out, as well as in the Capri School area, it sits up on a hill. If there's a Santa Ana, I'm told that the winds whipping up through the canyon down in Saxony would be a perfect disaster to deal with. Then if a private property owner has what appears to be brush fire potential hazards, are we better off calling the fire department, or are we better off calling the code enforcer? Because recently we called the code enforcer and he told 3 people he was too busy. So nothing has been done so far. And response to the helicopters, all they need to do is speak slower and we can understand them. Thank you.
Thank you. So now I'd like to open it up for discussion from the commission. Just a reminder that the goal for today is for us to receive the report. We're going to have 2 weeks to digest it. We're going to meet in 2 weeks. We're going to listen to their interpretation of the gap analysis 2 weeks from now. We'll also have a discussion about what we think solutions for the gap analysis are. Would you pull up that slide at the end where you did the roadmap? It's towards the end. So right there, could you call out the actual meeting dates that are happening and what we're doing on there? So this will help everybody see.
Yeah, so the survey results presentation is today, March 31st. The gap analysis will be April 14th. And then during that time, during the 14th, we'll present to you what our recommendations are. You'll come up with your recommendations, and then we'll bring those over to council at a date that is uncertain at the moment. But we would have to work with the city clerk's office to come up with a time to present to council.
Okay, thanks. So that sort of frames the discussion right now. Commissioner Vaughn.
Yeah, I also think that today, in addition to listening to the survey results, is also the opportunity where we're
Absolutely.
communicating things we've heard from the community, either in these forums or separately, right?
Yep, thank you.
So I have several points. I don't know whether you want me to just list them all, or if people want to talk about them as we go. I'm fine going either way.
I think, why don't you go ahead and bring up the things that you've identified in this information gathering period?
Okay. So one thing that we have heard in the evacuation and the congestion fears, part of it is the development and the pressure points, but part of it goes beyond that. And Chief mentioned that it was a little unclear some of the concerns that he'd heard, where the community said ambiguous things about what's happened in the past. And so I was here in 2007 for the Encinitas evacuation, and I know that some of the concerns that we knew about at the time included especially trailered horses primarily, but other livestock being evacuated, and those having particular challenges. Some of it was up at Double L, which Chief is well aware of. But others of them were just trying to turn out of your side street onto a larger street. And with the stop signs being bagged and the traffic flow on the main streets taking priority, even if they were crawling, they often would be too congested for the horse trailers to pull out. And so that was one area that was fairly strong concern. Similarly, the technology at the time wasn't as advanced as it is now, but the evacuations upstream from us included shelter-in-place neighborhoods that still evacuated into our tiny, congested neighborhood roads. And so we got behind hundreds of cars evacuating from shelter-in-place neighborhoods, which was a problem. Similarly, at the time of that evacuation, we were assured that our communities were going to be protected after we'd evacuated. By, at the time, it was indicated the National Guard would be doing that. But after my family left Encinitas heeding the evacuation orders, our kids were in high school at that time, and high school neighbors went and checked on our house several times a day for us to let us know that it was still there. And of course, that didn't make me feel terribly secure that the National Guard was keeping people out. So those would be some of the things on terms of the congestion and emergency evacuation. In terms of things to be aware of, when we had the Fitch series of community reports, one of the Fitch consultants was a bit of a technology guy, and he was strongly advocating the use of sort of smart signals for the traffic signals that are farther downstream after we've evacuated, so that law enforcement personnel or others who are directing traffic can direct people to the least congested, most efficient ways out of town. And I thought that was something that we shouldn't lose sight of. And then we've talked about the some of the traffic calming issues in terms of roads. But another one that I'd heard several times was challenges with some of the legacy roads. And this is not just in Olevenhain, where many of the roads are privately maintained or not. But it also is very strongly in the Cardiff area. And I'd heard at the workshop a discussion about how there had been a custom engine or something that was built to handle the very narrow and sharp turns in Cardiff, and that engine may have been retired or something. I'm not super familiar with that Cardiff area. I'm sure the fire chief is much more aware of it than me. But again, those super narrow roads really are scary, I think, when it comes to evacuations in any sort of event. Let's see, on the home hardening discussions at the workshop, I was there for that conversation, and I think that it's not primarily financial issues, that although there are some people, and having a grant would be useful for those people, but it's generally the hassle factor. The amount of work it takes to figure out how to do some of the home hardening, and can we leverage that knowledge base so that we make it easy for folks to, just write a check, or we have a whole neighborhood that brings in the contractors to do it, several houses, and you get a volume discount or something like that. Just working on the hassle factor. So the other thing I think was the Olevenhain community is pretty well organized, and I think we saw the reflection of that in terms of the turnout for the results here. And I think that does include work of the Fire Safe Council over the last half dozen or so years since we formed it. And I think that there is value in having fire safe councils for the other major high fire neighborhoods. And whether this is something that's one fire safe council with 3 sub areas of focus, or 3 separate councils, but somehow trying to leverage the fire safe council structure. And those new fire maps that came out last week, I was pleasantly surprised. In my neighborhood of Olevenhain, we didn't seem to get a great expansion of high fire area zones, but in the north and in the south areas of the city west of us, they seem to have grown quite substantially. And so I think that trying to leverage the learnings we've had from Olevenhain in those other areas would be great. I think that's it for me for now.
Okay. Any other questions related to the report or any information you'd like to add, Commissioner Andrade?
I just was curious when the water department was going to give their presentation that you had mentioned, or more information regarding that, as I think we know the Palisades, there was a large water problem there as well.
Yeah, we'll have that information for you next time. I mean, they were not consulted for the survey itself because there's nothing that anyone talked about water on here. But we will have recommendations to you about the water in the water district for the next meeting.
Okay, I think that then I'll be the last one with some comments here. With regard to the presentation of the report, so you listed a number often as you went through the report. Were those prioritized as effective as you went through, or was that just, because I know you summarized sort of the key points, but if I look at your report, is the first thing that I see, is there any bias why it's up there, or was it just randomly that was the first one that came up?
Do you mean when I was scrolling through?
Yeah,
those
exactly.
were in order of how they were put into the system.
Okay, so
there's
first
no
in,
priority
first
to it.
out,
Right.
so nothing linked to that. Thank you very much. Additionally, would you care to comment on any shortcomings that you felt and identified in the survey?
Yeah, I think the biggest shortcoming, I think, is the time frame in which we had to develop the survey, get it out to the public, and then get the results from that survey and then present it back to you. I think ideally we joke, we wish we had 3 months to put this together so that we can do a little bit more outreach and have more time, but we didn't have that option. So I think that was the biggest one. With having it as communities, sometimes there's some bias there. Liebenhain is probably the most vocal there, so we see that most of the bias is going to go towards Fire Station 6, towards evacuation routes. So when you only have so many, such a small amount of information, the data tends to lead itself towards one community than the other. And I think that would be the biggest bias out of the survey itself, is that I think it was 35% of all respondents were from Liebenhain, right? So if we had a larger, thousands of people that had a little bit more even spread around the communities, we could see what the community in Encinitas or the citizens in Encinitas really were concerned about. But with the time frame and then the heavy lean towards the Liebenhain community, I think that's the biggest bias and shortcoming of the survey itself.
Had you had 3 months, what would that remedied? What would it have looked like?
3 months would given us an ability to actually have an outreach philosophy, making sure that we weren't just throwing the social media together, the websites together, a flyer together, have more community involvement, get out into the community, more workshops, be able to do a workshop for maybe each community itself. There'd just be a lot more involved in the outreach portion, which would have yielded more response.
More response.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anybody idea like an N of what like for significant would be, like N of 1,000 would have led like significance or anything like that?
I think with a population of 62,000 people, I think 10% would have given us the best survey results.
Right.
I think we're less than 1%, right? So,
Yeah.
but with that said, there is something to be said for everything that was said in our survey was things that we've already heard in the community, right? So if we did take this and we multiplied it by 1,000, we might see the same information. I mean, that's Monday morning quarterbacking and trying to forecast something that we can't really do, but you always have outliers, and with a small survey or sample size, the outliers kind of become less outlier, more of the norm, and the more people we have, those outliers kind of fade away, and then we have a real ability to look at what the true concern is by getting rid of some of the outliers. So that's the hard part, is you can't really get rid of too many outliers, because then you start limiting the data that we have. And then I think you guys have heard me say this a million times in council meetings, all data is wrong, some are useful. So we have to have what we have, and we'll make the best out of it. And we'll also include with our recommendations back to you in our gap analysis on the things that we know also on our side, so that you guys are getting multiple viewpoints from our end as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I did take note of the promotion, and I was really impressed. It's fantastic, given the limited time. I also took note of the use of Spanish language as well. There is a population of English non-speaking. So I think anytime we can make sure that our communication is going out to them, it's absolutely fantastic. Additionally, I'd like to see, or can you tell me, public comments that were addressed. Is there a way in the report that we actually see something as tagged as a public comment? Is there any way that we can know, like, that was brought up during these sessions as public comment?
So specific to the meetings,
Yeah.
I would say we would have to go back and we would be able to pull up what those specific public
Yeah.
comments were. From the workshop, we
Yes.
did isolate out on the information that Chief has reported out. We had the Post-its and we had the sheets information that was captured, but we also captured information from the public comments that were made at the workshop.
Could you
So-
just highlight that? I think that's all I'm asking. Like, I know there were like 3 people that came to the podium, or 4 during the workshop. We had a couple people at the previous meeting that came to the workshop, and we just had 3 people that showed up here. So if we could just add to the report, that would be awesome.
We can add it to the report. I don't have it available.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's, and I think my plan here is make a motion on what we've talked about added. I think Commissioner Vaughn had some valuable information. I'm going to accept a motion to like add those comments added to your report. I'm going to have the motion to add sort of the public comments added to your report, just so it's called out. And I'll save my last comments because Commissioner Chesnauskas would like to speak.
Chief, I'd like to say, I think you guys, your staff, everybody did really well. I think that the goals that we were after to get some direction, I think we have good direction through the survey, through the workshops, through Levenhain. I learned a lot. I definitely see the alignment of the things that we're going to need in the city. Definitely staffing, education, workshops. Those things are valuable. The gap analysis, the question I have is, where does this budget that we're going to be looking at, where does this fit in for this next fiscal year? Is that in this gap analysis area?
Yeah, so with the gap analysis will be a recommendation of how we close that gap, right? Which will have a resource and a $ paired with it, so that when the recommendation goes to council before this next fiscal year begins and we close our budget for the next year, they'll be able to make some decisions on how they want to implement those recommendations or not, depending on how much is available in the budget.
Got it. I think there was a lot of alignment with another commission, the Traffic and Mobility Commission, in this survey. Does this get shared with them?
Yeah, we can share this with all the commissions.
Yeah, I mean, traffic, you know, it's redundant. So evacuation rights, I think it's a big part of good information that they need to know for sure. So, and with the survey, I think it would be good for all of us to be on the same page. So, thank you.
Does anybody else have anything? Because I do want to wrap up and I want to speak last, so.
Chair Morton, if I could add?
Yes.
Without a motion, we will be adding the information that you've presented to us, because that is part of our outreach and survey.
Thank you.
So we will have that presented back to you as well for our next meeting.
So no need to have it added and all that. Thank you for the guidance.
Just one clarification was, towards the end of your slides, you had some summary recommendations, and this is the one. Oh, Station 1 made it to the highlighted sheet. I just want to put a voice in for Station 6.
Yeah, Station 6 was also in there. I mean, some of the other slides definitely highlighted 1 and 6 were the immediate need.
Commissioner Vaughn, for the record, I was a little confused about one of your points, and I'm concerned that other people might be. So when you were talking, there was one of your points was about the National Guard, and you were frustrated because the National Guard wasn't. So could you? I think you rushed through that. So could you say what
absolutely.
the frustration was?
I'm trying to be a little sensitive on time and not
No.
wanting to manipulate everything. But
I mean, the Padres game will last.
The specifics there were that when they evacuated Levenhain in 2007, we as the homeowners being evacuated were being told that our properties were going to be guarded while we were gone, and that there wouldn't be any looting issues and there wouldn't be people having access from outside the community into these neighborhoods. It turns out that largely didn't happen. I think that there might have been one station at Lone Jack and Rancho Santa Fe Road to protect Lone Jack. But the other neighborhoods, there was none of that protection. So there's this sort of lack of credibility, I think, when you get asked to evacuate next time, where you're worried about, I wonder about the security of my neighborhood and my house.
And then, but there was a piece where you said your neighbors were going to your house?
Yeah, so our kids were in high school at the time.
Okay.
And so high school friends of the family would go by and check on our house
They
for
were doing
us.
the protection. You had civilian protection corps that was
Exactly.
unleashed. Okay, all right, thank you. I mean, this could almost last for, I think, another time, but I'm more clever than I'm giving myself being for more clever than I really probably am. But we participate in the Great Shakeout. Is there alignment for this? Because I've heard evacuation preparation, and I heard you talk about why planning for evacuation just doesn't make sense, because I don't want to, pattern you for a response ahead of time, because you need to be fluid, and basically your instruction is going to be on an evacuation, just run away from the fire on that. But is there just, in the gap analysis, that's a consideration, and I may just be trying to be more clever than I really am. I think it's more of a comment than a question.
Yeah, I think, let me first say that I don't think planning for evacuations is bad. We all need to plan for evacuations, but having a designated evacuation route is where it makes it hard, right? Because if I have if Commissioner Andrade lives on House A, and I tell her this is your evacuation route, and it goes right into the fire ahead of time, that's probably a bad thing, right? So, we have a lot of ways to communicate that with. Obviously, in the survey, we need to do a better job of getting that out. I think that's the key. And as far as alignment with the Great Shakeout, I know Marie would have a way better answer than I will about that, because she helps run that.
And I don't need an answer if it's not warranted. I really think it was more of a comment for later, but I'll give you a chance to wave it off, or
I'll give a brief response on this,
Okay.
because I'll be respectful that our project is focused on wildfires. We're an all hazard, city, so we respond, we plan, train, exercise for all hazards. That includes earthquakes. So when we're talking about, evacuation, obviously our focus for this project and for our conversation this afternoon is on wildfires, but that same conversation applies to if it's an earthquake, it's a tsunami, it's a flood. So it would be the same, but we can include that, and I think that's something we could probably include into our report.
Okay. And I think this is my last comment here, just as it relates to the statistical significance and concern and the focus for wildfires and conflagration. Thank you. The comments that were received were, in your opinion, focused on wildfire as opposed to, say, response to a fire that starts in Olivenhain?
Yes, to some extent. So even if a fire starts in Olivenhain, there is a possibility on a red flag day that would be the beginning of a conflagration. It's a little bit lower in the statistical analysis there. And if it was coming further east, it would have a lot more fuel, more time, and more ability to be a larger fire, right? But I would never say that if a fire just started in Olivenhain that it wouldn't have the ability, because it would be based on weather, topography, fuel load. So I can't necessarily say that it won't happen, but it's a less of a chance for it to gain that momentum.
And this,
if you looked at the Very High Fire Hazard Severity Zone map right now, you could see that they're saying the same thing. If you're looking west of Lone Jack, towards the middle, I'll say, of Olivenhain, it's cleared out more than before. There's more residents been built in there, so it's kind of thinned out some of that higher vegetation towards that direction. But when you go Val Sereno and Escondido Creek and all that, it still has some pretty good fuel behind it.
Yeah. So when I did my analysis and interpretation of like our role as the commission, right, in advising the city council and, you know, the worst case scenario, right, that would happen in a prospectively corrupt government, right, would be taking advantage of a situation where we're asked to look at wildfire response and proposing solutions that aren't necessarily for that, right? And so, you know, I'm sure we're just going to make sure we're paying attention to that the solutions were suggested are broadly solutions that were intended to respond to the risk of wildfire, which what really struck with me in my analysis was from the Fitch report, this is the biggest financial risk to the city that's identified, right? It's a bigger risk than earthquakes. It's a bigger risk than financially impacted, right? So it's obviously warranted, like paying attention to what we're doing. So thanks for that. And then finally, just I'm just going to ask for backup here. We don't need any motions, right? Okay. What's great is we work independently, right? And so we each get to bring our own voice on how we're going to spend the next 2 weeks and what we're doing. I'm just going to communicate that an interesting thing for me are just what kind of nudges, you know, as I look for gaps that the community will be looking at, and that's what I'll be looking at, and what sort of clever things we can do to help nudge things in the way how we go. So I think we're ready to move on to 5B. I feel like that's happening. Yep? Okay. With that, that takes us to the Public Health and Safety Commission work plan discussion. This doesn't need to be a long discussion. I did want to bring up that we're on a relatively tight schedule to get this out. We are currently only slated to have one regularly scheduled meeting, which is in June, and the City Council would like us to have a work plan in place by June. So we have some time, but if anybody else had been thinking about the discussion, I think we could just have like an open discussion for a few minutes about if anyone's given a thought about that. I just wanted to put it on the agenda. I'm not running, so. I'm getting some help. Are there public comments before we move on?
We have one public comment.
Thank you, Commissioner Vaughn.
We have Karen Kobelnitz.
Yes, that public comment would be mine. Thank you, Karen Koblenz. As the slide shows, seniors, vulnerable people, pets, and disabled are part of the opportunity that we have right now. My request is for the Health and Safety Commission, as I mentioned last time, please consider the vulnerable, the seniors, in all your work plan items, because we will have, and we had, 42% made comments on this. So it's really just from my heart that we are for 1 in 4, seniors are 1 in 4. So when you do a work plan, name us in there somewhere, and it could be maybe in all of them. You can't do that, I know that. But take that extra time to consider us. Chief Gordon and Manager Jonesworth, thank you so much. Very, very valuable information. I used to be a CERT person, well, kind of still am, and I recognize the value that this entire community now has because of your work. And as fast as it was, I still think it's pretty darn good. So thank you.
Anybody want to talk about the work plan? I'm going to have you move your cursor down to 5B instead of 5A. Commissioner Vaughn.
Yeah, we talked about this briefly at the previous meeting, and I don't know if there's a more up-to-date version of the City Council's strategic planning documents. What I have is the agenda report going into the March 24th meeting. But that, I think, provides a pretty high-level framework for how we should think about it if that hasn't changed materially since then. And so, yeah, I mean, it feels a little bit like the city council is telling us what they want us to focus on, which is what I know Vice Chair Dominguez was pushing for going into this year's planning. And so I am happy to just sort of reflect back to them what they've said. One thought for us is, you know, they'd kind of recognized the weirdness of trying to do a work plan for 2025 in June of 2025. And given that their strategic planning in 2026 will be sort of mirroring the timeframe of what they did this year, I'm thinking that it might be practical to propose to them a full year work plan from that mirrors the city's fiscal plan, so that we could reflect on what they've done in strategic planning this year, and then, you know, take advantage of that same thing next year.
So would that mean the fiscal year's January to December, or is it June to June?
Yeah, I think it's June 1 to June 1, or July 1 to July 1.
So, and we're currently aligned from January, so it's only 6 months. All right, thank you. And we would like to see a current or the final strategic plan, I think. Is that what you were alluding to, too?
I'm just going to ask Chief what the update is. He's obviously put something on the screen for us.
The website has our strategic plan, and this is, as you go through it. Oh. And these are the focus areas.
This was from the agenda report for the
That's not the
24th
strategic
meeting.
plan. That's a budget objective work page that we went over for our budget workshop, or the strategic plan, but that's not been released yet. That's not done. So that's a draft.
Okay, so there's nothing more recent than what was published
Correct.
for the agenda.
Correct. And then just to kind of go back to the fiscal year versus calendar year, we'll have to check to see if that is within the rules. I'm not sure if we can do that or not, but I will ask that question.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think even if it's maybe a 6 month and 6 month kind of thing, but just it doesn't really make sense to spend 6 months trying to decide what you're going to focus on, and then the last 3 months trying to figure out how you're going to report what you just accomplished.
Yeah, we'll get that information for you.
Yep. Is there anybody else? Because I'm ready to wrap up. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. Commissioner Chesnauskas.
There you go. Chief, I know that the mayor was talking about trying to get everything done. You originally said like in May, but was pushing for the end of April. Are we still aligned with those dates to give him the?
So those dates were for the survey and the assignment given about going out to the community through wildfire. So we are on track to hit that date. The work plan was June, and the next actually scheduled commission meeting was in June. So that's when that one would be coming back to you for a decision.
Okay, so that's. I'm a little
So if I
confused.
could, without a special meeting that happens before June, if we're going to meet the July timeline, we're going to need to, you know, it's a little unrealistic to think that we would debate, finalize everything in a June meeting in 2 hours. And so
Well,
that's what I'm trying to like get you guys to consider is like a special meeting, or we're moving the date, or yeah, you're thinking exactly.
Yeah, I'm thinking
Yeah.
that if we're on target to give what the mayor's asked us with our fiscal budget, the plan, everything by the end of May, then this gives us, you know, we know we're on track to take on the June 14th or that date. If we want to start it sooner, to start to discussing that, we can.
Yeah. I think having too many irons in the kitchen is bad. We're going to wrap up this wildfire effort May 1st,
Got it.
right? And so there's May.
Sure.
And so I just bring that up as guys be thinking about it, you know. We're not going to be I wouldn't recommend jumping in on this in April, but be thinking about what's on the work plan. I like having it here so we can have public comment come in for these special meetings, so I'll continue to have it. It's great, so people know we're talking about it during these meetings. And Commissioner Vaughn.
I'd like to make a motion that we plan for a special meeting to consider the work plan in the May timeframe after we've wrapped up the fire assignment.
I'll second the motion.
Excellent. Let's go ahead and call the vote. And while they're doing that, I'll just say it continues to remain a priority to me to try to get feedback from the outstanding effort that we did on the 2024 report to commission to the city council. I think that responses, well thought out responses to the hard work that we did, will help guide our strategic planning for our work plan for 2025. I have not taken any action on that to date, but I will be. I need you in my life.
Motion passes unanimously.
Great. I'm sure you don't have any insight into when that could happen at this time, but I'll entertain it just if you think you have some dates in mind. That makes sense? Or should we just wait?
Sorry, say that again. I was distracted.
Any work going on there in the last 30 seconds on what date might actually work for us, or were we just going to get an email after you actually reviewed it at a later time, suggesting our availability?
For the
Special meeting.
For
The work plan?
plan.
Yeah, in May.
I think in May is good. I think that's something we can add to your next special meeting on the 14th, and you guys can think about it and come up with a date that works for everybody. We can add that to the agenda for the 14th.
Yeah, I would just ask that you look at the calendar for May, see what dates are available, and then email us out like what our availabilities are based on the room availability, targeting probably the latter part of May.
Yeah, we'll handle the logistics on that. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent.
I had one last.
You
Yeah, so it's, yeah,
you're gonna log in.
I did. Did you clear me?
I did.
After
I did. I cleared you, Commissioner Vaughn.
Okay, yeah, just asking if there was an update on the filling of the vacancy on this commission.
I haven't heard anything. Is there a plan that we're aware of that we made by the council yet on when they're going to vote?
I don't have any of that information. So.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay. You can follow up. I want to adjourn, but I think there was...
We currently have recruitment open, and it ends next Thursday.
That is a great update. Thank you.
This Thursday, sorry.
So anybody that's watching or in the audience that's passionate about the Public Health and Safety Commission, we'd welcome your application. All right, let's adjourn. Thank you, everybody, for a wonderful meeting and your time. Have a great day.